A live look at the Texas Capitol. Lawmakers returned to the Dome this afternoon to continue the work of the session. And today, big news, both the House and Senate versions of the budget bills were filed. Pooja Salhotra, reporter for the Texas Tribune, is joining us now to talk about those bills. Pooja, thank you for taking some time to talk with us.
Thanks for having me.
You know, first and foremost, I think, is the thing that everyone was sort of anticipating was going to happen this legislative session, and that was the school choice, school voucher, education savings accounts, whatever you want to call it. That is in there, and the House and the Senate actually agree this time around about the amount of money that should be spent on those.
Yeah, they're both allocating or wanting to allocate $1 billion for that program, which is double what was proposed 2 years ago when this was one of Abbott's top legislative priorities, and there was a chance that this was going to get through. So we're seeing a bigger funding push this session, and actually more money than many other states have allocated for similar programs.
On the back half of that is the money for public schools, right? So during the last legislative session, during the special session, they were tied together in some of the bills, not in the Senate. The Senate passed them separately, teacher pay raises and the voucher bill, but tied together in the House. Talk to us about what public schools could be getting this session.
Yeah, so both budgets did allocate more money for public schools. The Senate is asking to increase teachers' salaries by about $4,000 and $6,000 for those in rural communities, according to Dan Patrick and according to the budget outlined in the Senate. It's the biggest portion of the school funding. A lot of that comes from property taxes, and there are also pushes to reduce property taxes and get some of those dollars going to the schools coming from the state's coffers.
Yeah, so and we want to point out a total of $10,000 then for rural teachers. All teachers would get that $4. Rural teachers would get an extra $6. And you bring me to my next point, though, and that's property taxes, because the Senate is including another big cut under their proposal for property taxes, raising that homestead exemption for the average Texas homeowner from $100,000 to $140,000. We don't see that in the House, though.
Yeah, so the House hasn't really outlined exactly what those property tax cuts might look like. So that's going to definitely be a point that they're going to have to work out. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, like you said, he's the one who spearheaded the effort a couple of years ago to raise the homestead exemption to $100,000. And like you said, he's now pushing to hike it up another $40,000, which essentially lets homeowners pay school property taxes as if their home were worth $140,000 less than the appraised value. So could be a big change there.
Yeah. We know that we're going in with a little less money than the lawmakers had the last time around, but still a budget surplus, of about $24 billion. That's a lot of extra money. What could they be spending that money on?
So another area that we're seeing a lot of funding is border security. So kind of consistent from the last session, about $6.5 billion in border security. Then there's a push in infrastructure, about $10 billion if we look at combined, thinking about energy, water, broadband. There's a push to get $5 billion to double the Texas Energy Fund, which basically incentivizes the building of gas-fueled power plants. An additional $2.5 billion in water infrastructure, which has been a big push for Senator Perry, but also last session we did see some funding for water infrastructure. This is perhaps less than what some people wanted. I was hearing some folks wanted $5 billion, but what we're seeing here is $2.5 billion, but still more to come.
Yeah, $2.5 billion and a lot of counties in Texas that want a piece of that pie. Pooja, we know you're going to stay on top of this, as are we. We thank you so much, though, for taking some time out to talk with us today.
Thanks for having me on.